All right, everybody, welcome back to Victory Over Self Radio. Victory Over Self Radio, diving into all things athletics. We will get into topics ranging from sports performance, weight training, business, and leadership. As always, we have on another phenomenal guest today, Coach Dan Mullins, joining us all the way down from the Peach State there in Georgia. It is just towards the end of July, so he is hot and sweaty all day, every day, getting those boys ready for the upcoming football season. We're excited to get him on here, hopefully talk a little tech, talk some peaches, talk some football, and iron sharpens iron here as we will try to make everybody better listening in. So thanks again, Dan, for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really looking forward to it. I've kind of like I was telling you guys before we hit the record button. This podcast has been a place that I've gone to for quite a bit of my knowledge and just listening and growth. And it's one that when Ross sent me the message and said, "Let's do it," I said, "All right, I'm all about it. Let's make it happen." So.
No, well, we appreciate you having on. And so Ross is we're going to call it the initiator of a relationship with you, knowing you before just, today. Like I kind of met you, obviously been following you on the socials and all that for a bit. But what we'll kind of start out with is we're going to turn it over to Ross. And Ross, let's get the party started with some good questions for Coach here.
All right, man. So we're going to let people, they're going to learn your background without having you bring it on. They're going to research it themselves. We don't like doing that whole deal. If they need to know your background, then go to another podcast. So, Dan, I know you're a conjugate guy. Use that kind of sort of framework. And so I've been on kind of a kick lately, doing a lot of research, listening to guys. Kind of give us the gist of, why do you use conjugate and how do you use it, and then kind of your interpretations and what your system looks like.
For sure. So real quick before I jump into that, you might hear some little voices behind me and things like that. And they're my family is always involved in everything that we do. I grew up, and part of me and what I tell my athletes, like I'm very open and honest, and I tell them, up front, I grew up without a father. I grew up in a in a single mother household and a lot of other external circumstances. And one thing that the one promise that I made that was that as I got into coaching and as I dive into it, I'm going to give everything I have in what I do, but you're going to hear my kids, and they're going to be there with me all the time. So if that makes me unprofessional, so be it. And they can't listen, I'm sorry. They can reach out to me and we'll have a conversation on a different time. But so if you hear them or they pop in and say, hey, that's they're very inquisitive. So, but yeah, so conjugate, kind of the very brief version of my background. I was a power lifter for about 6 years, ended up training at the sweatshop outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, which is Laura Phelps Sweat is one of the co-owners of that gym. And she's the strongest female powerlifter of all time. Trained with Louie Simmons back in the old days. Like if you've seen, I know you guys have had Fahey on. If you've seen West Side versus the World, she's in it. She's one of the stars late in the movie. The men's side gets a lot of attention, but the women's side's always been successful, regardless of the ups and downs of what the men's side experienced. The women's side was very, very consistent with what they do. So like I had the opportunity to train at Laura's gym, with like Janine Whitaker, Anthony Oliveira, Val was there with her. There was a lot of great people that were there. And so learn the system inside and out I had the opportunity to train there for about 3 years, when I was in my second time during undergrad. So when I was getting my education degree to teach, I was able to train there. Ended up competing at the WPO, really the WPC, which is the raw version. So it was on Team USA for that. Had a great experience there. Made a ton of mistakes, but also had a lot of fun and learned a lot about training. So when it came time that I ended up taking over strength conditioning for a football team, and then slowly all sports when I was back in Ohio, and then what led into today, like that was the foundational framework that I had learned. Like obviously we lifted and we trained when I was in high school, when I was in college and things like that. But the West Side method, when I learned as a power lifter, what I was doing, those were the things that I learned, was being explosive, learning how to train hard, but also train smart at that time and listen to your body and all that stuff. So all of those things were really, really important to me. And I think when you dive into it and you look at what Westside actually means and how Westside trains, like all of the things that they emphasize are also emphasis in what we do at the high school level. There's a lot of similar qualities. High five. Love you, Bob.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of similar qualities to, in just a little bit. A lot of similar qualities to, the things that we want our athletes to be able to do, right? Jumping, moving weight violently and fast, being very diverse in their skill set, having hypertrophy for some of those kids that haven't experienced puberty by the time they're sophomores, juniors, and seniors and things like that. So there's a lot of those common threads. So, in my opinion, there's a lot of Westside conjugate methods that allow us and support us to do our job effectively and efficiently, to build those systems around of a quality training program that allow you to still get the movement pattern reps, because obviously with 14 to 18-year-old kids, movement patterns and teaching movement patterns are a huge piece of what we do. So that I think the frequency that you train with within Westside, and plus the whole peaking schedule thing. Like, obviously we want athletes to peak at certain times, but at the end of the day, for instance, like football, week 1 is every bit as important as week 4, which is the same as whenever we hit our region schedule and then our playoff schedule. We have to be able to compete in those things. So I don't have the ability or the luxury of working with a team that we know we're going to be in the playoffs. We know we're going to be competing for a region title, and we can just focus on those things. So we have to, fight tooth and nail and scratch and claw to win every game. So the idea of a Westside method, where Louis' famous quote, "You don't have to get ready if you stay ready," like that's not a concern of ours, because I know we're going to move dynamic every single week, multiple times a week. We're going to get bigger, we're going to get stronger, we're going to get faster, and we're going to be healthy for a long period of time.
Okay, I like that, Dan. So what are so we've kind of talked before where for your dynamic pool, you're doing Olympic variations. You kind of talked where you're catching a couple days, you're not catching a couple the other days. What are typically the go-to Olympic variations you're hitting? And then why are you catching some days, not catching others?
Yeah, so we catch one, depending on where we are in the calendar, 1 to 2 times a week. A big friend, a big impact on my life and my philosophy of coaching is Stan Luttrell, who's another Georgia guy down here. He's at Colquitt County. He was at Buford formerly. He's a USAW international level coach. He's teaches them very well, and he's had a big impact on me, and kind of integrating some of the like Bulgarian methods of our training, of our clean training, and how we train cleans into them to be able to train heavy, force absorption, the technique side of things. Having our kids, when we go to train, for whatever reason, like we could squat, we could bench, we could deadlift, and we can clean. And regardless of all those things, whenever we do Olympic variations, they're more technically and tactically locked into what we're asking them to do. So for me, it's easier to demand their attention with Olympics, and they just automatically lock in for whatever reason. I don't know if it's like I coach them better or what, but for whatever reason, they're locked in really, really well. So I like that, and it allows us to be really efficient with those processes. But we catch 1 to 2 times a week, depending on where we are in that season. But I love to integrate some of those other variations into our Westside stuff. So, for instance, like if we have a dynamic effort squat going on, one of the things we might pair it with within that day, not in that tier, but within that day, we might pair it with a snatch grip lift off, or what some people might call a snatch grip deadlift. But we're going to stop at the knees to force proper positioning to make sure that we're there. We push the floor away, our hips and chest rise together, all of those coaching cues, but it's a technique driller for us for when we start to cycle back to the snatch.
Okay. So do you do the same type of squat on your strength day and your dynamic day? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Not really. And kind of the full disclosure, like the school that I'm with right now, I've been here for nine weeks now. We aren't fully integrated onto Westside yet. Like it's a slow integration by the time we get there. We'll be there. I would say we'd be heavily Westside by the time we get to the off season. So come December, January. So there's bits and pieces and touches on it. So like we haven't started box squatting yet, But box squat is one of the main movements that I love to do at various heights, whether low, whether high, whether right at parallel, for a lot of different reasons. You're looking at shearing forces on the knees. You're looking at vertical shins. You're looking at, starting strength off the box. So we'll come down and we'll pause. We'll make them control that weight, and then physically start it from a completely motionless position. We're looking at hips and glute strength, hip flexibility with being able to flare in a wide stance with a box. And then we'll front squat. I love dynamic effort front squats. I also love front squats as a primary movement. So like right now, as we're integrating everything in, we do a lot of like 5-3-1 within our system. So like on our strength days, they're typically a 5-3-1 style movement, because we don't do a traditional max effort in terms of 1 rep, 2 rep, 3 rep max plus accommodating resistance or things like that. We will occasionally here and there, depending on where we are in the season. But the closer we get into the actual season, more of that goes away, and our program begins to take a modified 5-3-1 approach, where that 5-3-1 replaces those max effort days, but we're still going to get our dynamic days. So we will play with the stances a little bit. We'll go narrow with a front squat to help support our cleans. We'll go a traditional back squat with a normal squat stance. We'll go wide stance sumo. We'll sumo deadlift as well. So we will play with their feet and play with their stance depending on what time it is in the year. And really on strength days, less so than dynamic days. Like I like to give them that a little bit lighter load, more dynamic load in the eccentric portion for their speed days, when we're going to try, whether it's a box squat or something like that, we'll try a wave. We'll do an entire wave of, wide stance box squats or sumo stance box squats before we throw them in as one of our 5-3-1 lifts, if that makes sense.
Yep. So when you get your kids, started in the program, and I don't know how young you're getting your kids. We're starting to get them in 7th, 8th grade here. And honestly, I'm going to start with 5th and 6th as well, but I'm not doing that with those kids. But when you get them started, how do you get them going into that system, and particularly from the breaking up of strength and dynamic work? Because a lot of coaches are going to get the argument of, okay, they're not strong enough to express power, not strong enough to do that, and push a little more repetitions and things of that nature. But how do you get your kids started when you're first getting into the system?
For sure. So right now, once school starts, I only have 9 through 12. We have 3 feeder middle schools, but we don't get 100% of any of them. So I think the biggest portion of those schools that we get is 60%. So I think they have weight training to an extent in the school day. I think it's like a block or a portion of their PE programming for 8th graders. So the first time I get any kid younger than freshman is that July freshman football player that's coming to our high school. So they do a modified 1x20 program where they'll go 4 weeks at 1x20, 4 weeks at 1x15, 4 weeks at 2x10, 4 weeks at 3x8, and then they'll run 5-3-1 for their entire second semester, except for those dynamic days. But I love integrating those kids in using that system, because it allows us to drill those movement patterns, but that doesn't replace their entire workout. That is their primary tier. So because of the restrictions of our weight room, when the school was built, it was not built to have as many kids as we have. So we have about 80 kids every single day or every single class period in there. But the school, it was originally built on sets of 6. So we have 6 racks with benches in them. We have 6 racks with no benches. We have 6 lifting platforms, and then we have dumbbells and things like that. So we have these rotations. So we're going to use a Joe Ken tier system where you have upper, lower, and total every day, because we are athletes and we do want to train the entire body each day in some way, shape, or form, because that's how sport is expressed and sport is played. So we'll tier our movements, strategies overall, but whatever our focal point is for that day, whether it's our squat, our bench, or our trap bar, when those freshmen or those first year, their first semester students get to that station, they have a 1x20 program with various exercises built into that. So on our upper body focus day, When everybody else is doing their bench press, and they're doing their 5-3-1 for that tier, when that group gets to that station, they might have a variety of different 1x20 upper body lifts at that station. It's on their paper. And then I travel with the freshmen. So I want to be the ones that teach the freshmen so that I know when they integrate into our second semester class, and then the rest of the 3 years the other 3 years after that they're with us, that they've been trained using my terminology and using my coaches eye to make sure they're doing things the way that I want them to do. So I'll travel with that group. Not to say that I won't pop into others here and there, but that is my primary focus when we are together. And so they'll do that 1x20 and they'll progress that. So for instance, let's say Tuesday is our upper body day. So when they come to our upper body main lift focused tier. So when they come to the upper body station, I'm with them. We can progress them through all of the movements that we have set. And those movements stay the same for that 4 weeks. So the next time they come back, they have their notebook and they have to keep track of the weight they used last time. If they get 20 perfect reps, they get to add 10 pounds to that. And now you have 1x20 again with 10 pounds heavier than what you did last week. So they have to show me their notebook and they say, hey, coach, last time I did 95, I've got 105 this time. Great. Go ahead and do it. 20 perfect reps, add 10 for next. And then they just keep track of that in their notebook. And then they progress that for the course of the 4 weeks. And then again, that rep scheme changes and we get a little bit more intense and then a little bit more intense to the point where at some point by the end of the semester, they're hitting 3x8. And then now we're working some of those hypertrophy stuff. And this goes back to week 1 when I first get them where, I'm very open and upfront and honest with them. And I tell them, hey guys, look, I want you to be successful. I want you to have fun. I want you to do all of those things this year. But I simply do not care about your performance in freshman football or in freshman volleyball or in freshman baseball. My job and my goal is to get a ring on your hand by the time you graduate. And they don't give out rings for freshmen or JV. They give out rings for what happens on Friday night or what happens with varsity jerseys on. So, and that's echoed. We have a stoplight system based off like game days and things like that we use. I think Cody Hughes was one of the first people that actually put it out there. But we modified it. And instead of saying I have a game 2 days away from now, or I have a game tomorrow, or I have a game today, it says I have a varsity game. I have a varsity game, in all 3 of those levels, because I tell them straight up, like, you're going to be fine playing your freshman game today or your freshman game tomorrow. I cannot tell you what my freshman record was when I was in high school, but I can tell you, 13 years removed now, that what my varsity records were in each sport that I played and some of my most memorable games. Like, I remember those. Couldn't tell you what happened when I was a freshman.
Man, I felt that.
Yeah.
Can I hop in, Ross?
Yep.
So with your freshman, you're taking that entire first semester, and every 4 weeks it's 1x20, and then next 4 weeks 1:15, then 1x10, and then sets of 10, and then sets of 8. Did I hear that correct?
Yes, sir. So we'll add a set once they get to 10. So we'll go 2x10 and then 3x8.
Okay, and then that's just getting integrated within the workout. So I'm a senior in my main upper body, and I'm doing a deadlift or a squat, whatever. And then as a freshman, I come in and I'm doing my 1 set of 20 or my sets of 8s or whatever else as the semester progresses. And then are you each 20, 15, 10, and 8, are you now assigning different exercises? So, hey, for your 1x20, you're doing goblet box squat. For your sets of 8, you're doing full-blown front squats. Can you just kind of answer that or give thought there?
That's a fantastic question, because when I do these things and I talk about what we do, like I'll get so like focused on one piece that like there's a major piece like that I completely and totally forget to touch on. So, but we do. So for instance, our 1x20 is a dumbbell goblet squat.
Okay.
Looking for full range of motion. Our 1x15 is a Zerker squat. And when I introduce them to that, they hate me. And then from there, we progress to a barbell front squat. And then from there, we progress to a barbell back squat. And at that time, depending on the group, like if their front squat is really good, and then the first week of that 3x8 segment, their back squat looks really good and they get full range of motion and depth. I may toy with teaching them the box squat that week, that second week of that one. the biggest thing for me that when I've done this is that I don't want to reinforce partial movements. Like I don't want, when we do back squat without the box, I don't want you to stop where the box would be. I want full range of motion, good quality squats below parallel, full range of motion for all the whole entire myriad of reasons of why we want a full range of motion squat, right? Including like knees tracking toward the toes, not vertical shins. So like there's a whole piece to that where I don't necessarily want to drill that into freshmen yet. So it really is dependent on the group. And I know that's a kind of a cop-out answer. But I try to save the box squat to be something I teach for our upperclassmen because they, for the most part, I have them all summer long as well, all of our athletes. So I can teach the box squat at any point in time in their program, and we can add that in season, out of season, doesn't matter. Like it's fairly simple of a process. Once you understand how to squat in general, we can add that in later.
Okay.
So we will change those. We will change those exercises. We keep the movement pattern really, really close, but we'll load it differently, or we'll add like in one of our primary lunge progressions. The first 4 week is a goblet split squat. Then we move to contralaterally loaded split squat. Then we'll load it to a front foot. We'll go to a front foot elevated split squat, then a rear foot elevated split squat. So those are our 4 progressions for our split squat variation. So it's all about that, progression regression conversation, and making sure it fits up with like the flow of your room, but also it makes sense. Like I'm going to make this kid do this movement for 4 weeks straight and prove to me that they can handle this before we go on to something, especially at a 14-year-old who, like, I don't know about you guys, but when I get 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds in my weight room, I'm like, I know I have explained to you 5,000 times how to spot a bench press, but here we are and your partner's getting pinned under the bar because they don't know how to control it. Like the conversations we have over and over every single day. So if those conversations from a maturity perspective about all the other things have to happen, I can't expect to like teach them at one time. We do 1x20 this week and then move on to another variation. So I think that 4-week timeline has been something that I've found to be of the same exercise over and over for 4 weeks. I think that's been a really good sweet spot for us to really pattern that and drill that in. And I say that, and then I've only been with this group of freshmen for like 6-7 weeks now. So as we get further into the semester, I might have a different answer for you. But from what I've done in the past with the groups that I've had in the past, that's worked pretty well.
Awesome. Okay, and then follow up to that would be why a set of 20 versus a set of 3, 4, or 5 utilizing tempo, right? What is it about the 1x20 that you like more than slowing them down concentrically and eccentrically, all that?
For sure. So I go back and forth on this a lot often. Like I'll do ISOs within our program. I'll do some triphasic fingerprints to our program here and there, depending on where we are. But I really like triphasic in that like December, early January section of our training, because now it's a great time for when our freshmen are starting to transition out of being freshmen and into being upperclassmen, and then take our upperclassmen and slow all of them down and just train slow with that attention to detail. So it's almost like a refresher for our upperclassmen and new teaching for our freshmen all together at the same time. So I've done that before. And it's probably something that I will utilize again when we get to that time. But when it comes to actually like the freshman itself for their first training cycle, my reasoning would probably be more associated with the flow of the room. I found it hard to have one group of our students when you have 80 in a room. And I have one other assistant in there with me who isn't entirely, I hope he's not listening to this, isn't entirely bought into the way we do things yet because he hasn't seen it. He's, I can say this part, he's like 65. He's not listening to podcasts, so I'm fine saying that. But when I have 80 in the room and we separate our freshmen out, like I found it really hard to have everybody else on like my normal program and then this small population on a triphasic style program or an ISO based program or something like that. So it may just be the setting of where I'm at. Like if I had a class of all freshmen, the whole class, that my answer would probably change. But it's more so from a flow and management perspective.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And then last kind of follow up to that, Ross, and then sorry, I'll throw it back to you. So you have 80 kids in the room at a time, hundreds of athletes throughout the week, maybe up into the thousands. What are you writing your workouts in or on and then presenting that to the athletes? Are you writing it in a software, Train Heroic, Team Builder, Bridge? Are you in Excel, Google Sheets? And then are you printing out sheets for each age group, for position groups? Are you writing on a whiteboard, projecting it? How does that all go down logistically? And this could be a super short answer. You don't have to get long-winded if you don't want to.
For sure. No, I use Rack Coach because it allows me again to help manage the transitions in the weight room, and frees me up to coach instead of because there's the audible buzzers and timers and all that stuff. So it makes it really easy for each kid to know what they're doing. If you haven't done it, it's an awesome program. Mark Hoover just jumped on board with it and started implementing it out there at Metrolina. So I use that to manage our room, and that's what's projected on our 2 TVs. And then each rack and each group has their own card that's posted on their rack. And they take it with them as they rotate. And for that, I utilize Cody Hughes' Sheets program, which is a fantastic program that allows you to program for multiple different styles of athletes at different points in their training calendar, all at the same rack. So really cool. A kid with one of my baseball kids, one of my football kids, and one of my basketball players, they could all be at the same rack because they train hard together. But Cody's program is really, really streamlined and organized to a point where I can program for basketball. I can program for each of their needs, but then when I print their sheet, it pops up with what they need, even though they're all together at the same rack. So I love his program. So that's what we print out and we post on our rack.
Cool. Awesome. Nice. Okay. Yeah. Just wondering logistically how it goes down. So appreciate it. Sorry, Ross.
I think the term is, I struggle with all my educational terms, but differentiation of instruction. Like when I still get evaluated, because I'm a PE teacher. So when they come in to evaluate me, I'm like, I've got this for differentiation. I've got this for RTI. I've got this, all the acronyms and all the extra stuff that we have to do. So
nice. Dan,
I don't envy that.
I miss those days.
Yeah, college level. I just say, hey, do this. You have no choice. Yeah.
Dan,
I've never had a problem with it. I've never had a bad score on them. It's something that you have to do in order to keep my teaching license and stuff like that. And usually, knock on wood, so far, all the administrators that have been assigned to my weight room, when they come in to evaluate, they're just like, looks good. I don't understand what's going on here, but we'll talk later. I'm like, we're good.
Awesome.
All right, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit, Dan. Since we're just starting out to the fall sports and conditioning and all that good fun stuff. And as we know, fall sports are typically the ones that get the baddest reputation, I should say, because you're starting out in the fall. Kids probably didn't show up in the summer, and if they sat around for 2 months and we start in August 1, they're going to look like crap. Whereas winter and spring, they've already got fall and winter semesters to prepare. So what for you, what would be your suggestions, or how do you progress your kids to be ready for August 1st? And then how do you think coaches should handle your kids that you didn't see all summer and then they're showing up day one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is a multi-layered answer. And I think it's a little bit easier for me because I do have, and I know you have it written down to talk about later, but I have Titan GPS. We use 25 different units on it, so I can track what our kids are going through throughout the entirety of practice, day over day over day over day. And I'm in a system where our head coach really values that, kind of because of some of the shared experiences we had last year with it, where I came to him and said, hey, I'm nervous about these couple guys. And we ended up having one, based off the load that they were experiencing. They had this really weird dip in practice load. And then it was a really cold week. We were on a bye week. They hadn't been going hard in the weight room. So the perfect storm for injuries. I just said, hey, I'm nervous about these two kids having some kind of a soft tissue injury, because we're trying to push them for intensity and all these other things. And it's just not their metrics don't look good and I don't like where it's going. And unfortunately, one of them had that day that we had that conversation, one of them had a pulled hammy that ended up nagging him for the entirety of the rest of the season. So like that, unfortunately, unfortunate circumstances, one of those that I wish I was wrong. But that bought a lot of points in his book, knowing that like, no, this stuff's legit. Like the data that he's coming to us. And when these conversations are happening, we need to listen for a whole host of reasons, because he just predicted, like, unfortunately, that this injury, was at risk. So that has allowed us to have this relationship to where like he gives me a lot of, and as the co-defensive coordinator, like we all do the practice schedule together for what each segment of practice looks like. So kind of this perfect alignment of who I am being like the Titan guy. Like I monitor our GPS in our school, and then I'm in charge of the weight room, and I have a hand in directly structuring practice. So there's things that we do within practice that kind of reflect a little bit to what you're talking about. So one of the primary things that we do from a conditioning perspective is that we tell our coaches that during 3 specific segments of practice, we want to coach on film and strictly on film. And that's team, that's 7-on-7, and that's inside run. So whenever those 3 are happening, coaches don't stop practice. Coaches make notes on their own sheet, and then we'll fix it up later. But this is a period where the pace of practice is strictly drives what we're doing and playing the game of football to make it line up to the game itself. So we have a little bit of data, and Titan's one of the systems that makes it easy where I can tag practice, and then I can get a load per minute score off of what that segment of practice looks like from an offensive perspective and a defensive perspective. So then I can go back when I'm monitoring and say, hey, these segments look good as far as like our load per minute score. So we did a great job of mimicking the demands of the game, and now go coach up technically on your film, or vice versa. Like, hey, we dropped the ball practice, like that load per minute score wasn't high enough. It doesn't match what we want it to look like to mimic those game demands. So we need to do a better job of driving pace, whether that's getting signals in faster, getting the ball spotted faster, coaching better on film, whatever it is. Like there's this whole host of reasons that we need to do those things. So all of those things. So sorry, my wife just walked in the door. So my wife is my kid's favorite. So she takes a cake on all of them. So he got really excited. Like he was fine just hanging out right here. And then she walks in the door and it's like, Mom's, like I wasn't even there. So no, so we want to make sure those 3 periods of practice are really structured that way. And then what we do is during specific other portions of practice that is more geared toward our ones that is not geared to our ones, that our 2s and our developmental players, those are all the same. It's kind of that same approach. We want those kids to have those reps to match the demands of the game. So all of those things are what matter to those guys. So it's about those guys that are plugging in at the end of summer who haven't been there. We want to make sure that during those segments of practice, when our upperclassmen are getting the 1s and 2, the vast majority of those reps in those 3, we have another drill that's appropriate to their position that's also going to mimic demands of the game. So like our JV players will go, when we're doing 7-on-7 with our DBs and our wide receivers, they will go down and do routes on air, because anybody that's coached football knows that a JV 7-on-7 period does not match the demands of the game, like because of how much teaching has to happen. So they'll do routes on air where like they'll do combo routes. So they'll do 2x2 routes and 3x1 routes, but they will have to do 4 plays in a minute, where I can't tell you what the route is. It's pass concept, reset to this line of scrimmage, pass concept, and you have to get us X number of routes. So we might start that as 3 routes in a minute. Then we might go to 4 concepts in a minute, 5 concepts in a minute, and then we rotate them out. So then that way, now the next group is coming, and then that group goes to rest. So then that kind of mimics, we're not an up tempo style offense. We're very much a smash mouth kind of offense, and we just want to do it over and over and over again until the other team breaks down. But that gives us, for those kids, it gives us routes and combos. So now they're learning it on the fly, but more importantly, they're getting those game demands before they step out on there as well. So if we've got a kid that might be challenging for a varsity spot, but wasn't here, all summer long, we might plug them into those same exact drills, even though those drills are designed for freshmen and sophomores and guys that just aren't developed yet. We might plug them in there while they're learning the concepts and proving to coaches that they belong on the field. We might plug them in there to say, hey, number one, you have to know your job. This is a great way to know us when we signal. I don't know what our concept is, but like one of our concepts, our wide receivers coach, they signal this. I'm a defensive guy. I don't care about offense, but they signal this. And like, you have to show that you know what this means by running it, even though you haven't been here all summer. So like, that's their opportunity to go do it. And prove that they know their job well enough to be in that mix for those guys. So we structure practice like in areas like that so that we don't really have to condition very often. Kind of when we get back into, like, this last week was our first week back into acclimation, working helmets, working towards short pads and full contact. We'll do a conditioning drill at the end of practice 2 days a week. Sorry, he tripped on a bottle of water. So we'll do a conditioning drill at the end of practice in which we kind of mimic the work-rest ratios of a drive, and we'll start low and we'll add volume as we go. But like we started with 3 quarters, and our guys will start. Seniors will start first. Everybody else is back, and they're on the goal line. And we'll start with a 20-yard. They'll start. Everybody's in the 3-point stance. On the whistle, fire out to the 20. It's a full sprint to the 20, turn around and get set at the 20-yard line. As soon as everybody's set, we blow it again, blow it again, blow it again. So down and back is 1. They've got 3 reps. So they get 6 bursts of 120 yards, and then they're off. And then the juniors will go 6 reps. Sophomores. Then if we have freshmen with us 2 days a week, and they have their own practice the rest. But if freshmen are with us, freshmen will go, and then we'll go second quarter, then third quarter. And so we'll layer that. So we started at 6 reps at 20 yards, and ultimately we moved to 10 reps at 25 yards as a quarter. So we add volume. So like the first week we did 2 days a week, or 2 days the first week. And then from then on out, it was 1 day a week. And it's something that we'll do once a week if our loads of practice aren't high enough. So we'll confirm with Titan. And we will never do that before Wednesday. So I don't really look at the Titan data until after Tuesday's practice. And there's a system that I use to check and see if we've gotten enough volume, enough intensity, which players need more. So if certain players have done more and have done enough, and these players over here haven't, then I'll grab them and they'll condition for 5 minutes after practice, take their pads off, condition for 5 minutes. And it's a drill specifically structured for the games of football. We're not out there just like running gassers or 110s or, mindless conditioning. Like, they know that they're not in trouble. Like, I didn't pick this group out because I don't like them. I picked them out because you haven't had, like, for whatever reason, whether it's a coach's tactical decision-making and we haven't pushed the ball down the field enough, and you're a wide receiver and you haven't got those downfield routes. You just haven't had enough volume and yardage naturally in practice or organically in practice. So we need to artificially inflate those numbers to the point where you are prepared, not because we want to artificially inflate those numbers because there's some magical standard, but each kid's number is based off their performance in the game. So it's like, we're not just, like I said, mindlessly conditioning. We're trying to get you ready. So we'll start there, and we'll add volume, and then we'll add some frequency for those players that haven't been here. That's a great way for them to start small, because again, it's 20 yards. Like, it's not a difficult task. If you've been an athlete before, if you've done things, like, we have kids we have a freshman who's 330 pounds at 5'10" and not a good 300 pounds, if you get what I'm saying. Like, we're consistently waiting. Like, when we do this drill, we wait for him, but it's a great opportunity for the rest of our team to cheer him on, because they know he's one of those kids that he needs football more than football needs him. So this is helping him get in shape and live a healthier lifestyle and things like that. So, but it's a drill that's not going to put that kid at risk for rhabdo or for heat-related illness or any of those other things. It's safe, it's structured. It's tough. Like, we're going to ask you to perform when the circumstances aren't ideal at the end of practice, but it's something that you're capable of doing. So we take all of those kids, and that's one simple thing that we do, that we add in that helps push all of those kids onto the same page.
That's great. Dan, I love what you're doing there with the GPS. Obviously, having the load per minute score is clutch, and being able to match your demands of the game is huge. Building that volume over the summer, and then obviously, like, having guys who aren't there in the summer, that sucks. Like, that's just part of who we're working with. But getting those guys in and getting them reps once they do come in, seeing if they can manage that. Obviously, demand, like, if they can't, then they're not going to play. But when it comes to in season, how will you manage that throughout the week? Will you continue to keep things the same each day, or do you have kind of a high and low that you're looking for using the GPS? And how does that work along with the workouts that you have with the team, and how often do they work out?
For sure. So I have in season, whenever school's in session, I have our athletes 90 minutes a day, 97 minutes a day, every single day. So Monday through Friday, if you play a sport, you're with me for 97 minutes, which is unbelievable. That's an awesome blessing, because like, it doesn't matter where you are in a competitive calendar. Like, you have that time carved out in the school day, which is a whole nother conversation that I'm going to try to not delve into here. But now, like, we can take that stress and those expectations off of you doing it extracurricularly, and give you the opportunity to do that here. So that after school, you can go do homework, you can go work, you can go be a kid. Like, you can do all those things that supports the mental health of athletes. But again, no tangent there. Back to your question. So in season, like, yes, we do structure our practices off of like a high-low model. Where Monday, coming off of Friday, Monday's kind of a midday, because we are installing and teaching new scheme and adjustments based off the scheme of what we think the opponent's going to give us. So because of how much teaching there is, we can't have a high day, because there's just with, again, high school kids that you have to teach. Like, it doesn't matter how many times you've seen from an offensive perspective, you've seen a 3-4 that year, like, you're still going to have to go over, hey, this is how their defense is going to line up. You just can't say, hey, they're going to go into a 3-4 gap control or a 50 slant angle. Like, kids aren't going to know that. So you have to teach that on Monday. So because of that, we're kind of capped Monday to like a mid-intensity drill. We still try to structure some competitive period. Like, we might go best on best, depending on if we're beat up or not. So we like our one defense and our one offense as much as possible. We've got like 2 or 3 crossover kids. Like, we might need to fill those spots in, but we might go best on best to kind of help drive that load a little bit. So like, if it's a day where we have a lot of teaching, we might structure that into practice and go best on best to drive some artificially drive some load. And then Tuesday is our day where we absolutely get after it. So that is our high day for the week, specifically because we want to absolutely drive intent. So those are our downfield passing route days, where the playbook is 100% open. This is our opportunity for kids to organically hit max velocity as much as possible. So like, we try to allow them the opportunity to organically hit that. One of the thresholds that I track with our GPS is we want to hit 90% of max velocity twice a week or 2 different days out of the competitive week. So Monday, Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, whatever it is. We want to hit it twice a week, so that way we know we're prepared for it when the time comes on Friday. So this is one of those big days that we really look for everybody to hit max velocity or near max velocity organically on Tuesday. So we structure practice to reflect that. So playbook's wide open, call whatever you want. Plus we have competitive periods. Plus those are the days we do 7-on-7. Those are the days for our O-line guys. There's a coach I talked to that runs their offense is very outside zone based. So for their O linemen, that's when they're trying to get that 90% mark, because that's about the only time that they're going to hit 90% because they're offensive linemen. I've got an O lineman whose max velocity is 13 miles per hour. I wish I was joking, but he's 6'6". He's a 16-year-old. He's 6'6", 355, and he's like really soft. But he's got, because of his size, he's got a lot of room to grow. Like, he's got big paws on a puppy, but we got a lot of work to do with him, but he's got great potential. But his max velocity is, like, I think 13 mile per hour is the most I've ever tracked him with no pads and nothing on. So his average miles per hour, or his average mile per hour on a sprint is like 9 miles or 8.5 mile an hour. So, like, those are, each kid's different. And that's why, like, having those Titans as that check mark and having GPS is huge, because then now I can know which kids are actually, performing well at practice organically and which kids need some more of that external stimulus. So we'll match that up with the weight room. Then Wednesday's a low day relatively low day for us. We'll have 1 or 2 competitive periods throughout the entire practice, and that's it. But it's also a shorter day. And then Thursday is a midday as well. We've got a scripted, we call it mock game, where we're going to hit every scenario that we expect to see on Friday night. But we also practice on Thursday morning. So we have Monday morning, Thursday morning, and Thursday morning, we want it to be relatively intense. So, like, we might get out there and compete one more time in a series of structured drills, not like organic competition where everything is open, where, like, defense is going against offense and we're both calling plays. But we might structure like a specific goal line competitive drill where you've got one of each position out there: O-line, D-line, linebacker, secondary guy, and so on. And we're going hash the sideline, and we're just trying to score. And defense, don't let them score. So that way we artificially inflate that load and artificially inflate the intensity a little bit, but it's external to the game. So we give them that mid-stimulus, and then they're off until it's time to go on Friday. So that way we can kind of maximize our day or maximize our competitive calendar on that high-low model, so they have enough rest to recover from Thursday to a Friday, even though we had a midday on Thursday. But they have maximal time because they've got a full 36 hours from the time we're done to the time we go out for warm-ups is about 36 hours. So weight room wise, Monday we'll do our squat. Again, this will change next season when we have the opportunity to get more West Side integrated into it. But Monday is going to be our squat day. Again, we just want to get in there, drive some stimulus, full range of motion, work out some of the soreness, give some active recovery when needed, to replace some of our exercises for guys that are still beat up from Friday. We don't see them Saturday or Sunday. We say, go rest, go be a kid, go do all the things you need to do, and just rest and recover. So we've got some digital resources of some lists of exercises, some YouTube videos of athletic yoga stuff that we pump out them and say, hey, these are some suggestions we would like for you to do on the weekend, like pick 1 or pick 2. And then we've got some kids that will still, like, they'll go to the gym, and when they do, I tell them, like, hey, go get a pump, go be a kid, train biceps, triceps, shoulders, traps, like whatever you want to do, like, go have fun. Just don't bench, don't squat, and don't clean. That's all I ask them to do when they go to the gym on the weekend after games, because we've got a high number of kids that say they're probably going to go do that. So Monday when they come in, we squat. Again, it's tiered system, but our primary motion is a squat. Tuesday we'll come in, and that's our Olympic lifting day. Again, we want to marry that up to what our model is for the week. So if Tuesday is going to be a high day on the field, which is right after we get done lifting, it's like we'll lift, we'll transition to get pads on, and then we'll go outside of practice. So it's the timing of the school day is pretty nice for us in that aspect. But we'll Olympic lift. That's our big Olympic lifting day. So we'll catch on Tuesdays. We'll get our volume in the weight room on Tuesdays is extremely low. Like we might do 10 sets of 1 on our cleans. And that's it. At like 75%, looking for absolutely perfect reps. Wherever you catch, give me a front squat. Something along those lines. Like there's a myriad of different options of what we'll throw in there, but it's our Olympic lifting day. Again, a relatively high stimulus, very low volume. And then we'll go to practice and have a high day. Guys are jacked up, running around going nuts, because we just primed their system in the weight room with a high intensity day, low volume. Then we come back on Wednesday, and everyone has an athletic yoga on Wednesdays. So that is our active recovery day. We'll go through our normal warm up. We'll address some mobility work. We'll do an athletic yoga class. I go to YouTube, and there's, I type in athletic yoga, and the guy that pops up, he's the first one that pops up, but if you click on his channel, he's got hundreds of videos. He's absolutely awesome. It's something in flow. But he's fantastic. Kids love it because like there's a little bit of a language barrier. So like he's speaking English, but like They have to, I love it because they really have to focus on what he's saying to understand what he's saying. And then their grade is directly reflected on how much they participate. I tell them, I don't care how good you are at yoga. That's not what you're getting graded for. It's how much do you try. So then we'll do that on Wednesdays, kind of bring it back down, address some mobility concerns. And then that ends with a 20-minute period where it's absolutely silent in our weight room. Kids are laid flat on their back, nasal breathing, and most of them end up falling asleep. But it's that reset for them to be able to say, like, hey, we're in the middle of the week. Most of you guys didn't sleep well last night. Well, let's get everybody flat, get you laying down, and kind of hit that reset button for a few minutes. Thursday, then we come back, and Thursday is our bench press day, where, again, depending on the 5-3-1 model of what we'll do in season, like we'll hit that mid volume, and then we'll get after it there too. And then Friday, we have a specific game day lift that incorporates our trap bar deadlift in it, but we want to be explosive and powerful in that. Whether we're about to go get on the bus or whether we're playing at home that night. So it just depends on the schedule, how far away our game is, but we'll game day lift, and that's where we'll incorporate some of the things I've stolen from Alan Bishop, where he's doing like accelerated jumps. He's not the only one, but he's the primary one I like to steal stuff from on this stuff. But like some of our accelerated jumps, our French contrast things, like to prime the system to be ready to go, because you just came off an extended period of rest of over 24 hours, where our expectation is that you were resting, you were eating, you were recovering from the whole week of practice before we go play our game on Friday. So that's kind of the long-winded version of how we tie all of this stuff together between the field, the stimulus, structuring practice on what the stimulus we want the kid to feel, and then how we tie that with our weight room.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, Kurt, you want to lead the way here on your sprinting questions there? I know you want to talk about that 15-yard burst a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I was scrolling through Twitter, right, to try to kind of figure things out here, a little bit about your training, about your weight room setups, your logistics, all that. And I think it was July 10th you had a post. So July 2023, it was a 15-yard bursts and your record, rank, publish kind of system that you had up there. And it had a name, it had a position, had graduation year. I thought that was one of the best graphics for high school athletes that I've ever seen. Can you talk to me a bit about that? Have you seen that somewhere else? Did you create that? Is that kind of a standard thing with Titan? Please, to discuss that post for us, please.
For sure. So I want to say I'm a big Tony Holler, feed the cats kind of guy. But there's a lot in the track application of it that I don't understand. Our track coach just asked me to coach this spring, and I said, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, aside from getting kids fast, I don't really know much about track. It doesn't make much sense. Like, I know how to get kids faster, but I follow a lot of what Tony does and what Chris Corfus does, and that combination there. So one of the biggest pieces that I jumped onto very quickly as I was trying to educate myself in all things feed the cats was the record, rank, and publish. Sorry, I always get it backwards. Yeah, it's record, rank, publish. I love to say rank, record, publish. I don't know why. But yeah, you have to record first before you can rank them. So we'll record everything that we can get our hands on. So like that's one of my primary drivers of data. So whether it's a fly 10, a vertical jump, whether it's GPS data, like this goes outside of just our GPS application. One of the big things we'll do tons of different variations of fly 10s. I love them because of how variable they can be. We use a dasher timing system that allows us to do a lot of different things. So like we'll do a roll 90 test, which is essentially like a fly 10 with a bend halfway through, a 90-degree bend halfway through. So again, which kids can put their foot in the ground, change direction, and still measuring their time when they're moving through there. We'll do a fly 10 and then make them stop within a certain amount of time. So that way, like you can't pull, because we are tracking the amount of time you're taking to travel this 10 yards, you can't pull up and just go 70% and then expect to stop really fast. Like that your time's going to get inflated there. So we'll do a ton of different variations of those. And then we'll record them, we'll rank them, and then we want to publish those. And we want to promote success and promote competitiveness. So Titan has that graphic and that option within their online platform, that I can go in there and I can make any graphic that style that I want. So it gives me an option to make leaderboards. So I can make any leaderboard that I want doesn't have to be Titan related, does not have to be GPS data, does not have to be any of that stuff. I've made vertical jump, counter movement jump, PR leaderboards for our entire program, athletic program. I've made fly 10s. Obviously, like Dasher and Titan have nothing to do with each other, but I can use their platform to make their own leaderboard. But any of the GPS metrics that I use, like because it's on the leaderboard and in Titan, I can say, I want this date, I want this metric, give me a leaderboard, and it pops in and it'll fill it in for me. And then I just click download PDF. So it's a very simple system. It's a great graphic because then I've seen kids screenshot it and send them to each other and start talking trash with it. So I love it for that. But then our kids love when they see their names pop up on there, man. Like they retweet it, like their parents retweet it. I remember I got an email from a mom one time. Like we had a kid, and I do different variations. Like I'll do our skill kids together, our mid kids together, and then I'll give our O line and D line. I'll separate them out and rank, record, publish just the O line, D line. Because I want them to be able to compete amongst themselves. And if I know that if I did it just the whole team, obviously they're never getting on there. So I did an O-line. I think it's the post you were talking about, but I did an O-line, D-line one, and I try to tag them on Twitter, like whenever they make it. Twitter's really the only thing that I have, or only social media I have, but I try to tag them. And I remember one time one of our kids' his name's Jack Brown, like the most common name you're going to find on Twitter, right? So like, I could not find our Jack Brown on Twitter anywhere. So I tagged the other 4 guys. I just posted. I searched for like 10 minutes, tagged the other 4 guys and posted it. And I got an email from his mom wondering why he wasn't tagged because her baby made the leaderboard. And so I'm like, I'm sorry. Like I found his page. Like we're good. And she's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize it was that. I guess that makes sense. I'm like, I promise I wasn't trying to leave your kid out. But like parents love that stuff. Like parents will retweet it. Parents will comment on it. So it's just a great way for our community to get around and like get a snapshot, even though they're not at our training sessions or not at our speed sessions. Our community gets an idea of what our kids are doing. They see what names are habitually popping up. They see that little Johnny's name popped up for the first time and they get excited about it. I've had coaches, like football coaches in our area, shoot me a message and say, oh, you have a sophomore show up on this. You have multiple sophomores show up on this. So like, are you guys not going to be very good this year? I'm like, I don't know. We'll see about that. But because their year and their position, all that stuff's on there. So we are going to be really young this year. But it just helps further the community because now like everybody has an idea of a snapshot of what our kids are doing. Aside from the videos that we'll be posting and aside from all that stuff, they know who's working or who's excelling at what we're asking them to do. And then on top of it, our athletics program sees what their funds went to. So, right. So like it's a big piece for them is like, yeah, we'll buy it. If you can explain how you're going to use it, we'll buy it. But if there's a way that I can show our community how we're responsibly utilizing over and over and over again and the frequency of how we're using the funds that they allocated for us, it makes it easier for them to understand that where the money's going, what it's being used for. And then now next time, if there's something that I need in order to do my job more efficiently or to better my impact, then it's more likely that our administration is going to say yes, because now our entire community sees what we're using it for. So that's been huge on that piece too.
Wow. Never would have thought about the communal impact or aspect of something like that. And so kind of first follow-up question, do you ever get to directly go to the booster club or the president or, meet for breakfast in some shady way and say like, hey, I need $10,000 for this. Can you help me out? Like, is that ever a thing? And that's where this community aspect of record, rank, publish kind of comes in.
I will go on record and say that I have never had any shady breakfast meetups for anything. So
I'll just say that's the high school football TV show of let me meet the booster president in the back alley and try to get some. Okay, but anyway,
that's not accusing. That's not really a thing. No. Like I know the TV show you're mentioning, but that's not really a thing. So for most of us, but no, it was kind of one of those situations where. In this process, and I know we were talking about this before we got on, that it was kind of like a package deal. So when our head coach applied for the head coaching job, he said, I want this job. I think it's a great fit. I think it's a perfect alignment. but if you hire me, you have to hire this guy as well. We ended up having a staff. There's 4 of us total: our head coach, myself, our OC, and our D-line coach. We all came over together from the school we worked at before. And part of that conversation was our athletics department utilized this as a perfect opportunity to take all athletics and unite it under one umbrella. Our athletic department as a whole has been kind of fractured, may not be the right word, but to an extent, they've been relatively fractured because the person that was in place before me was very much a football style method of training for everyone, and that where the only thing that really mattered was we're getting stronger. And they've been, and the catch-22 of it is really hard because we've had an extreme amount of athletic success. The school opened in 2008. We've made the state playoffs every single year in football since then. We won it in football once and played for it another time in a very short amount of time. We have a volleyball state title, multiple track and field state titles. Like there's been success, right? So part of this coming in was like, all right, well, they've done it right for a long time. I know it's going to be a little bit difficult to have those conversations and convince them that doesn't mean that was the best way to do it. That may be a little bit of a confirmation bias there that, well, we won, so why don't we just keep doing what we've done? Mm-hmm. So there was a little bit of that, but those conversations happened early where with administration, like, hey, if this is going to happen, these are some of the things that in order to do my job the way that you're going to ask me to do it and the way that I need to be able to function, there are a few pieces of support that I really need. A jump mat, a timing system, an athlete management system, and then the GPS piece. And I said, it does, like our football boosters, like by this time our head coach was kind of getting a snapshot of what the booster club looked like and how it operated and things like that. And he's like, we don't expect it to all come from the school. Like boosters will pay, like we're happy to do all of this. But, and then they were also asking questions and follow-up questions to know that these weren't just technologies that were going to impact football. We were going to spread them inside the classroom across all athletics and our non-athletes that take weight training. They'll all be able to utilize all of these things. So we'll sprint, we'll time, we'll do all of those things with all of our athletes in the school day. So now we were able to use some PE funds. We were able to use some technology funds for like our management system. We were able to piece together a lot of these things, and then obviously boosters kicked in and helped a lot as well. But our administrative support has been fantastic. I've always heard how important it was within a changing positions and changing schools, how important it was to have administrative support and what that looked like. And I agreed and I understood the premise of it, but this was the first time in my life I experienced full support in the sense that we're going to give you autonomy. And we understand that these are the things you need in order to have that and execute at the level that, we're going to trust you to do. So we're going to help you acquire those things to confirm from a data perspective and confirm that, we're making progress and that I'm handing over athletes that are more prepared for their sport. So they've been fantastic. And that's kind of been the introductory portion to Allatoona of how it's gone.
Awesome. No, I love that. And I love, I'm happy for you that you're at a place where you're getting supported, and good thing too. Like you knew, it's kind of just a good lesson for all coaches of have your list of needs and wants when you're going somewhere. You never know when the AD might show up and say, hey, what can I get you? And if you don't have that, if you're not ready, you're just going to kind of be screwed there. And
always ask for the wants, because it's more likely you'll get the needs, and then they know what's on the radar. Yeah. Right. So like our principal came in right after we got done one of the football workouts this summer, and she's like, how's everything going? Are you using, is there anything else that we missed that you need? Because she saw how we were using all of those other things. She saw that we were using everything that we had asked for that they had delivered. She knew that we were using those things and that we were getting our money's worth. So she came and she's like, hey, is there anything else you need before school starts? I was like, a TV would be nice so that we could project to multiple TVs, and our weight room's really long and skinny. I was like, because it's hard for people down there to see the TV that's down there. She's like, okay, here's the PE card. Go to Walmart, buy it. And I was like,
awesome.
Okay. So
Love it.
things like that, but it's responsible use of what you're allocated and showing how it's impacting and how it's been used is more likely to say like, all right, cool. You're using things very well with what you've been given. So maybe we can trust them with a little bit more.
I love it. And then this is a ignorant GPS question. You guys get an indoor. Are the Titan GPSs capable of still recording everything inside of an indoor? And I'm asking because like I'm in a hockey rink. Blair's up in Massachusetts, not always able to be outside. How do those work?
For sure. So yes and no.
Okay.
There's some metrics that I can get indoors. There's some metrics that I can't. This is kind of the next layer of systems to where, like, from a GPS perspective, how do we offer this next layer of services without exponentially increasing the cost? Because there's some systems that will work indoors. I think it's Zebra is the one that I know of that, like, in any indoor you can always get it. I think a lot of the NFL uses it because they're on an NFL budget, right? Yep. So, there's another answer that I can't really give you right now because we're recording. But there's some stuff coming down the road that I think will revolutionize across all GPS providers. Some things that, as technology advances happen, will make this much easier.
Perfect. Hey, well,
but yes, I can get some of them now. So like our boys and girls basketball team gets 5 pods each after football season. And there's some data that we can use to help them out with just the pods that we have right now.
Awesome. Really cool. And so, coaches, we're kind of, I don't want to say coming to an end, but as we're trying to wrap her up here for you so we could all get to the kids and all that. Talk to me about 616 Athletics, right? So please first just tell everyone your Twitter there so that it's out there. And then there's a link there. You click on it. What is 616 all about?
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is Coach D Mullins, Mullins. Being in the South, I get Dan Mullins quite a bit. I wish like his bank account's a lot nicer than mine, but no, so it's Coach D Mullins. But a year and a half ago, I started getting some questions about, doing other things outside of my current role in the school system, being like programming for other people. And I've always programmed like some bodybuilders or some general lifters or some power lifters here and there virtually. So I've always done it to a little bit of an extent, but now like trying to be a little bit more like balance the line between giving resources away and charging for them. There's some resources that I had when I used a previous GPS provider. I needed some things, so I had to build a Google sheet and things like that. And then other people that use that same provider were like, well, I need that sheet. And I would just give it to them early on. And I'm like, well, I spent quite a bit of time making that sheet, and some conversations with other people like Cody Hughes and Mark Hoover and a couple other guys that do some similar things, like to start actually like charging a little bit for that and providing some other services. Like I program for 2 other high schools as well. One just a football program and one is a basketball program. So like programming for other people as well. So when this started, and this started before I started programming with them, but kind of had the vision of launching an LLC or a side business to be able to run all of this through, so that way, like everything was legitimate, all the tax documents, all that stuff. So launching this side business was something that was a needed stepping stone in order to do all those things and kind of unite those under their own umbrella as well. So, my wife and I were sitting there like, we had this idea, we had this plan, we had all of the things in place. Like we had purchased the website, purchased all of the things. And then we're like, well, what are we going to call it?
Yeah.
So like we went back and forth and we kind of struggled for a day or two. And then, one big piece of my kind of internal struggle as a coach throughout my career and as a teacher has been that the idea and the concept of imposter syndrome, like not feeling like I belong and feeling like, I shouldn't speak regardless because of like, what am I going to give that other people are going to find value in? Like why am I in the conversation and things like that? So That's always been a key piece of kind of like my backstory or my backside as I've been coaching. Like that has always been an underlying issue. And then, kind of just through sermons one day at church, and then some follow-up reading and things like that, I was brought to Joshua chapter number 1, where the Israelites are kind of going through this entire struggle where they're about to enter the promised land, and there's all these other things that are going on. And Joshua's feeling some of that same, imposter syndrome. Like he's not there. He doesn't feel as if he's ready, he's prepared to go, or he should be the guy to lead, and all these other things. And Joshua 1:6, which Joshua is the 6th book of the Bible, so that's where 6:1:6 comes from. Is 6:1:6. Joshua 1:6 is the Lord confirming Joshua in that, there's going to be difficult times, there's going to be hard times, but you are the chosen one to do this because of XYZ. Like I have prepared you the way. Like I'll take care of everything else as long as you trust and lead the way that you're supposed to be going. So it was God's confirmation to Joshua that he is doing what he's supposed to be doing. He is doing what God has called him to do. And that was kind of as this conversation started and we started talking about this, like this has been like, I've worked in other things here and there. Like I've done personal training. I was a science teacher and coached football when I was in Ohio because they didn't have in-day strength conditioning. Like I've done other things. I was in sales, but this was the one thing, like when I got into strength and conditioning, that the first time that I've ever felt like this is what I was made to do for every single day for the rest of my life was to coach. And this is what would allow me to do that. So that was kind of confirmation for me that, I am doing that. And I am doing what I was called to do. So that's where 616 kind of comes from. And then the logo on it is on our company logo is a graphic lion. And that's just my representation that, I think as Christians, a lot of us have like this idea of Jesus as like this long-haired dude that's always perfectly manicured, walking from town to town, performing miracles. But I think that oftentimes lets us get a little passive with our lives and what we do, and just kind of going about the day-to-day grind of what American life and Western culture life has led us to. And so like one of the tattoos on my arm says Lion of Judah, and it's a lion. Again, another conversational piece within the public school where people ask me all the time, but it's my reminder, both like when I see our company logo and when I look down, like there's a specific way that our life is to be lived. And it's not like, it's not passive. It is active. We are supposed to be chasing the greatest opportunity and fulfillment of our purpose that we can. And it's not just like, if Jesus just sat there, people probably at some point would have came to him, but he's restricting what his ministry was. So he was active and went out into the community and went out and traveled and did all the things, and he did the work, and he didn't live a passive life. And so many other stories of the same throughout the word. And it's kind of my confirmation of, this is how I'm supposed to live. And this is the 616 is the confirmation of what I'm supposed to be doing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the honesty and then a little bit of vulnerability in that. And I think any coach listening could definitely relate to the imposter syndrome side of things and kind of the struggles we had, and who can't relate to Joshua of like, hey, you're going to follow Moses. Like, oh, sick. Like, thanks. Yeah, I'm ready for that. So since I'm going to call it, peeled back some layers there, if you don't mind me asking, you said at the kind of top of the show of growing up, single mother household, no father figure around at home, and yet you feel this immense call to be a coach. So I'm assuming at some point in your life, you've had a coach or some sort of male figure who tremendously impacted you. Can you describe a little bit of, that person and kind of give them some honor and glory on this, if you would, if there was a person like that? And then what are you doing all this for? Like, why do you want to give back to, why are you staying at Allatoona and not trying to chase getting to the NFL? I think it would be helpful for a lot of people just kind of hear your heart there.
For sure. No. So yeah, I was raised by a single mom. My dad was at home until the age of 10, but really wasn't at home. He was arrested when I was 10 years old for the first time. He was incarcerated for multiple DUIs. So he had spent some time away and then bounced around, and parents ended up getting divorced and some other things. And so he wasn't in the picture. And then obviously as a single mom whose ex-husband is incarcerated, he can't pay child support. So she has to work multiple jobs. So she was gone quite a bit doing all these things. And it wasn't really until high school where, I was heavily involved in sports because it was just fun for me. And it was my opportunity to, be socialized and be around other kids and parents and things like that. And really wasn't until in high school where I had that consistent kind of role model-ish relationship with coaches. But I had some good youth coaches that even all the way up through my junior year of high school where they showed me like bits and pieces of what it meant, but I never really had that one person. And that was for me a big piece of this. And I'll come back to that in a second. But when I got to my senior year of high school, we had weight training as an option for school. So I had signed up for it. And it was with, I'm from a really, really rural town in Ohio, about an hour east of Cincinnati, one stoplight, graduating class of 66 kids or 63 kids. We didn't even have a football team. We'd have to go travel for the next team over to the next school over to play football. So like super small town. And we had our weightlifting coach was our baseball coach. His name was Tim Collier. He's now the superintendent of the school, which is a weird story. Like you can only find that in small rural places where like the PE teacher became the superintendent. But he, I still remember to this day, like the consistency that he showed up with every single day to weight training. Like he didn't know like all of the science behind weight training, but he loved to lift himself. Like he would lift all the time. And he was a dad. His kids were around quite frequently. And he was just a consistent figure of, hey, like, it doesn't matter how you feel today. Like, yes, you have this test. Yes, you have all these things going on. This is your opportunity to kind of disconnect from that and just be here and be present and have fun and do what we do. So, he was one that first kind of spark of that allowed me to really enjoy training. And that was the first time I ever like lifted anything. So I really fell in love with it from that. And he kind of instilled that for me. And then from then on out, there are multiple people here and there that kind of like helped direct that path. One of the other ones that's worth mentioning is Cliff Marshall, who's now in charge of the men's basketball at Indiana. I was working when I was in school full time. I was working full time. My second time in undergrad. I was working full time, and the company I worked for was a pharmaceutical company, and I worked security, so I'm working the front gate. They also owned what's called Ignition, which was they do a lot of NFL combine prep and some other things there, and some other training. But Cliff was employed by Ignition to run their NFL combine prep training. So he came over, and we would always have conversations at the gate because he knew I was a power lifter, and we would have conversations for 15, 20 minutes, borderline making him late for his meeting with people much more important than the company than I am. And he would always take that time. And I remember specifically one day he straight up asked me, he says, "Why aren't you doing what I do? Like, why aren't you training people? And why aren't you a strength conditioning coach?" So I'm like, well, Ohio, you have to have a degree for teaching, and I'm trying to finish that. And he's like, "All right, when you're done, let's talk." And then he ended up moving on to Indiana before I graduated. But that planted the seed of like, all right, this is a thing. This is really an option. So kind of this combination of all of those things and bits and pieces here and there that reminded me of where I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to do. And then on top of it to kind of be that one person, or try to be that one person, because I'm not perfect. My wife's not afraid to tell you that. I'm not perfect in any means, but try to be that consistent voice for the next generation of athletes. Because a lot of them know that, I tell my story with all of them. I think it's awesome. Important for them because I have a lot of, I coach with a certain intensity. That's not like the fake rah-rah stuff. That's like real and like intensity. And sometimes I think it's easy for our kids to kind of forget where I come from and why I do that. and why I coach that way. So I tell them my story often so that they know where I'm coming from. But hopefully like some of our kids, that are experiencing what I went through, like that are single mothers, that don't, or not them not being single mothers, but are raised by single mothers. Dad, wherever he is or whatever he's doing, or maybe he's just not, like, it's not a great relationship. Like, I want them to know that I understand what they're going through and that they can come to me with anything, and that we are about, and our head coach is right there with me in this part. Like, we are about changing lives and developing men. Like, if we win football games, fantastic. But I want to develop young men and women. I do have all sports, but his mission is football because he only has that. But we want to develop young men and young women that understand their purpose, that seek after like what they were put on this earth for. Because I felt once I found that, like, a lot of the other pieces in my life fell into place, because I knew, like, they all say, like, what your calling is when you don't have to get paid $1 or a dime to do what you do. Mm-hmm. I need to get paid for what I do, but I love going to work every single day because I know what I get to do. Like, when the door shuts, like, regardless of the administration, regardless of parents, regardless of all that stuff, when the bell rings and kids are late if they don't make it in and that door shuts, it's me and the kids, and that's it. And I get to, for that 90 minutes, I get to be the person that they know is going to show up for them every day. And we commonly put everything aside and we get to train. Now, we do have conversations, obviously, about mental health and all those other pieces that go with it. But for those 90 minutes, they get to be a kid. They get to compete. They get to all work toward a common goal. And I think there's something there, that there's an atmosphere there that I want to create for them that I wish I would have had before multiple years and multiple patterns of mental processes had gotten in place. So that's kind of the really long-winded version. I'm sorry, I talk a lot. So
no, it's
that was great.
Ross says it always well, of like, one of the most important skills of a coach is communication, right? If you're just giving these bland one-word answers, I don't know how high quality your communication would be, or even just your ability.
I need to learn the
coach.
flip side of that, though. I need to learn the flip side of that, where, like, be more concise, fewer words. And that's part of, like, the PhD program. Like, a lot of the feedback I'm getting is like, you could have explained this shorter. I'm like, I know, but I don't want to.
Hopefully that's not coming to discussion board replies there. That'd be pretty brutal. Of
no, it's just the grading.
Other students.
It's just the grading. All right, but their comments, like, I'm getting decent grade, better grades than I ever have in my life. But we'll see.
Awesome. No, I love to hear that. Well, we'll kind of wrap it up here, but what I love oftentimes when you're discussing things with coaches is there's the sets and the reps, there's the technology, there's the weekly layouts and all that. But again, when it kind of comes down to it, what we're trying to do here is we're in a profession of impacting young men and women, or older men and women, whoever, and trying to impact their lives as much as we can. And so many of us are just called into this profession of teaching and educating and instructing. And man, when you find it, and if it's truly what you're meant to do, there's nothing else like it. It's a beautiful thing where, the four of us could be out on a field, look around at our schools and be like, man, somebody somewhere's in some office right now just pushing papers, and they are missing out on all of this. So praise God for coaching, man, and it is a beautiful thing. Guys, any last kind of word here for Dan or anything like that?
No,
man,
cool. All right, Dan. Hey, thank you so much for coming on. We're excited for your season coming up. How many more days until first game?
We are 2 weeks, just under 2 weeks to our first scrimmage, and then one more week until they matter.
All right, beautiful. Well, we'll be excited and be following along, and excited to see what your season turns out like. But we know they're going to be one of the best prepared teams down there in Georgia. Coach, thanks so much, Dan, for coming on. We appreciate it. Everybody, thanks for listening. Hopefully, you got as much out of this as we all did. I know I took a bunch of notes, and it gets me excited for my hockey seasons upcoming. Thanks again, everybody.